Okay.
All right. We reserve the right to change anything at any time based on the written report. So I highly encourage you to read the written report. This is just a preliminary, so if something happens and we change our mind and we want to replace a comment, that's totally acceptable. But this is just the preliminary version of it. Let's start with the roofing material. The roofing material is a three-tab presidential grade shingle. It's the highest grade shingle you can get. It typically lasts 40 plus years. The material on the roof is not brand new. It's probably at least. Do you guys have when you say it looks like maybe at least 15 to 20 years?
Probably more like 10 or so, 10 or 15.
10 or 15. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's well within its service life. The material doesn't need to be replaced anytime soon. What I did notice there were areas where they did temporary repairs. They repaired some ridge cap shingles by putting like Henry's tar over those, and then they used a foam around the chimney itself, like an orange foam. None of that is like a permanent repair. So I wrote that up. That should be permanently repaired with proper flashing and a replacement of the ridge cap shingles. Ridge caps typically start to go around 15 years and you end up having to replace those. So I wrote all that up in the report. And so you'll see the photos of all that kind of stuff. But that's generally the condition of the roof. Material still within its service life, but there are some repairs that need to be done. Let's move on to the plumbing system. There is a mixture of copper supply piping and original galvanized supply piping. For the most part, the water pressure was good at the faucets and fixtures, but the shower here at the front bathroom had a very low flow, and then it actually wasn't really functional at all. So I wrote that up in the report, and there was a leak at the supply piping in the underneath the sink in this bathroom as well, and that's where most of the galvanized is. So I wrote all that up and recommended repairing that and correcting that. Let's talk about the drain lines. The drain lines are cast iron and ABS plastic, so it's a mixture of old and new. Everything drained pretty well except for, again, the tub here in this bathroom was slow draining. So it seems like this bathroom kind of had most of the plumbing issues. I wrote that up in the report. I looked underneath the house with all the drain lines. Nothing was actively leaking, so that was good. But we definitely need to get that tub to drain properly. So I wrote that up in the report. And then after that, there is a number of finished plumbing issues like loose faucet handles, loose faucets, leaking faucet handles. I wrote all that up in the locations where those are. You guys can read through the report for that, but there was a good amount of deferred maintenance on the finished plumbing. Let's move on to the electrical. There is a 200 amp main panel at the right hand side of the house. The service, or the electrical service, comes in from overhead and then feeds into the panel. There's also a sub-electrical panel out in the garage. I pulled the panel covers off both those panels. Everything was wired correctly inside of those panels. I checked all the outlets that I could get to. They were functioning and wired correctly. The main note I had was there's some lights that are out, basically throughout the house and along the property where the bulbs need to be changed. Those were kind of the main thing. I'm trying to think if there's any other more minor electrical. I think everything else was really, really minor, if anything. So overall, the electrical was in good shape. Let's talk about the HVAC system. There are 3 systems servicing each level. 2 of them are electric heat pumps. 1 is a natural gas furnace. The systems overall are heating and cooling, but I did make a lot of notes about the condensers outside. There's some rusting to the housing of those condensers. They are beyond their estimated service life. They're older units. The ducting is not strapped correctly in the crawl space. They're using plumber's tape and things like that to support that ducting. Really, we want to use big 3-inch straps, not little metal straps. It cuts into the ducting. There's torn ducting, so there's a lot of deferred maintenance, but they are functioning and working, and they're older units. I think that's the main takeaway. Let's move on to the exteriors of the property. I made notes about the grading and grade drainage at the front and at the right-hand side. You can tell there's areas where it's like water pools next to the house, and then at the right-hand side, the same thing. At the rear and at the left side, you've got the hill there, so everything drains pretty well over there. I wrote all that up in my report. There's an extensive subsurface drain system that looks like it terminates a lot of that water onto the back hillside. It looks like there's a place for it to connect and actually go down into maybe another subsurface drain, but it's not connected right now, and I don't think the best thing to do is to terminate concentrations of water onto a hillside. That's a way you get water to channel down the topsoil. So I wrote that up. Also, and I made notes that you may want a drainage contractor or some kind of drainage professional to come out and take a look. With a house on a hillside, drainage is super important. So inadequate drainage or areas where we're terminating water in the improper location can become problematic. The next is the deck at the back. There are sections where they extended the lower deck out and they didn't use joist hangers. They used toe nailing to do that. Really, we should be using joist hangers. They also put some posts in and just set them on top of cinder blocks. A post needs to be on a proper pier that's buried 12 inches into the ground or whatever an engineer would say for this hillside, how deep ever that needs to go. So I wrote all that up in my report and recommended a general contractor look at the framing to that lower deck. And I took photos of all that and put that in there. And then the wall cladding, the brick veneer at the front, if you look between the bricks, a lot of the mortar is deteriorated and needs to be repointed. And I took photos of that and recommended a contractor look at that because some repointing work is going to need to be done to the veneer. So all that is in the report. And I think that covers kind of the main points of the exteriors. Let's talk about interiors. Moisture damage is like one of the number one things we're looking for. I found water damage basically underneath every single sink in the house. And then a very slight water stain on one of the walls upstairs. I mean a really light water stain, like just it looks like a drop of water went down the wall. So I took a photo of that where that was, but mainly most of the moisture damage was down underneath all the sinks and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I took photos of all that. I put that in the report. I made a recommendation. Anytime we have water damage or water staining, we typically recommend a mold person or a qualified professional to swab those areas and make sure everything's cool because I can't determine if there's mold in the house. After that, everything else inside the house is more deferred maintenance, like a door that doesn't latch or a door that's not square to frame, things like that. So you guys can read through the report for all that, but it's relatively minor after the moisture damage underneath the sinks. Appliances I checked, dishwasher's working, stove is working, the microwave is working. The only thing I could not get on out of all of the appliances was the oven. It sounds like it's trying to kick on, the igniter's going, but it didn't turn on for me. So I wrote that up in the report. It may need somebody to sit there for 15 minutes. I maybe just sitting there trying to get it on and eventually it will kick on, but it didn't just turn
Maybe
on.
power lights off or something possibly.
Well, it's an igniter, yeah, so maybe. Garage, I made a lot of notes about that garage door and the way the system is installed. There's some gaps between the garage door panels. There's a gap at the bottom of the door. The door doesn't have a safety reversing device at all. It's a pretty old system and a pretty old door, and I recommended a garage door contractor look at it because overall it had quite a few problems with it. Although it is functioning, it's opening and it's closing right now. Let's see, there is an attic access in that garage as well, and that because it's in a garage and it connects to the house, there actually needs to be a fire rated hatch on that garage access, and so I wrote that up as well. But the framing inside the attic that I could see actually looked to be in good shape. And then what else? I think I want to say that's the main points of the report. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Water heaters was two 50-gallon water heaters put into one water heater, or two 50-gallon water heaters are installed, which gives you 100 gallons. The one problem I saw with that's a safety concern is the two vent pipes come together, which that is okay if you grow in size by 50% once you put them together. What happens is they come together and they stay the same size pipe. So we need to get a bigger pipe there, or you could have backdrafting and CO gases go into the crawl space. So I wrote all that up in the report, and that's a safety concern. I think that's the main points of the report. Are there any questions about any of that stuff?
I have concern about do we need the camera, for the underneath dry up, the clean out? We have any problem with it?
Oh, as far as getting, you what do you mean?
Camera check.
Oh, because you guys want to do a sewer line check.
Yeah, should.
Yeah, no, there's a clean out down in the crawl space down here or the basement. There's an access for a clean out if somebody wants to run their camera. Mm-hmm. So you have access to that, no problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or shouldn't have a problem unless they can't get the clean out off. But then there was another clean out even further down. Oops, sorry. Any other questions?
Peter, do you have anything?
No, where's the drain from here? The front of the garden.
Right. So it looks like it terminates out underneath there. That's what I was saying. It looks like that. I can't tell you 100% because it's underground, but it makes sense to me that if there's an ABS drain line terminating out back, considering where the street is, that's the only way gravity's going to drain it. Yeah. So I'm thinking it's terminating it out onto that back hillside. Which makes sense. Yeah.
And that one have to be connected to the something like that, not go out on the street.
Well, stormwater can't connect with DWV, which is drain waste and vent piping. They have to be separate. So one is stormwater, one is wastewater. They should be separate. But what we normally don't do anymore is just terminate water onto a hillside, concentrated amounts of water, and just dump it, because you could get erosion of the topsoil. So there's usually a drainage plan for that. Now, who runs that? You can get a drainage contractor, or you can get a geotechnical engineer, and they can take a look at that and tell you what kind of drainage plan you need for that. But I know just terminating on the hillside like that isn't right. What's weird is there's another drain right below where that terminates, almost as if that's supposed to connect to there, and that goes to the stormwater system, but they're not connected. So it might be a really simple fix. It might be as simple as just
Where is it?
it's underneath the bottom deck.
Okay.
So you have to go down
Gravity
and
wise, just rains to the top of it, just fills up and just goes right down to it probably.
probably what it's trying to do. So you have to go down on the hillside and go under the deck to see it. But I have photos for you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that thing we can connect it, is that right?
I don't know where that. I don't know where that drain goes because I can't see it.
Oh,
So
I see.
that's why I'm saying it might be that simple. But either way, right now, if it's that simple, great. But if it's some other thing, like we need to do something else to disperse that water into the storm drain system, that would be for either a drainage contractor or a geotechnical engineer to decide.
Anything else?
Okay.
Great.
So how about the one that you're talking about under the sink?
Right.
That's
That
the
one,
mold.
the mold.
Have to check the mold.
I mean, there's a moisture damage under there for sure. That's probably the most extensive area of moisture damage underneath that sink there.
Doesn't mean there's no, it just means that there's potential.
Potential.
Not necessarily.
Potential means no fix. No fix.
Go ahead and say it.
เราก็เอาเลเซนมาตรวจ
Yeah.